think most people are here, at least bodily. So, for today's talk, I thought I'd talk about insight. And it's a big word in meditation. Sometimes have insight meditation practices or insight groups or something. But just a little bit of history just to get you interested in this. That the insight meditation, as it's called these days, is actually originated about a couple 100 years ago. And there's because mindfulness and where it came from, where it became well known, came from the insight meditation which originated from Burma. It took a while before people did their research and found out where it came from. And where it came from was when my ancestors, again the British who were in India, when they just went into Burma as well, and they took over Mandalay, then many people got a bit worried. They thought this was going to be the end of real Buddhism. The Brits will go in there and they will start converting people. And there was one quite well-known monk who was called Ledi Sayadaw, that's L-E-D-I, Sayadaw. And to make it quite clear that the monks' names over in Burma, that they were named after the monastery or locality in which they taught and lived. So now we would have what would be probably called Serpentine Sayadaw, which was started off with Ajahn and now myself, and whoever takes over. Now when I pass on or retire, if ever that's possible, then there will be Serpentine Sayadaw. So Ledi Sayadaw was the name given to the monk who was at this monastery. He was a very progressive monk, very smart, very wise. And he noticed one thing, that the Burmese monks are very well versed in the suttas, that that jhanas are necessary for enlightenment. It's the Eightfold Path, and you can't get into enlightenment without those jhanas. And anyway, once you know what they are, it's just obvious. But nevertheless, there's so many lay people having a difficult time getting jhanas. So they were saying, oh, we can't get enlightened, so what should we do? And so he decided to, for want of a better word, to get a type of meditation where the lay people would get a bit more encouragement. And that became our Vipassana tradition. And sometimes I think, come on, you monks, and myself as well, and nuns as well, we should never sort of diminish or demean the Buddha's teachings to try and make them popular. But he was concerned that Buddhism might even die out in Burma, so let's do this to encourage more. There's nothing wrong with Vipassana meditation, but eventually you do need the jhanas somewhere along the line. And so it was actually because of, again, political situation at the time, trying to preserve Buddhism in that land, that they started teaching this. And also, I like to say that, some of the monks in our tradition, sometimes we even buy into this idea that lay people can't get jhanas. And I've told you already that, I'm a rebel in that sense. And also that I'm well-travelled, know a lot of very senior monks, talk to them, discuss Dhamma with them. And when I was in Vietnam a few times, I talked with the monks there. And they told me that they called it the United Buddhist Sangha, whatever it's called. Anyway, because in the north of Vietnam, Vietnam was, I think, originally like 3 countries, north, middle and south. And the south of Vietnam, being close to Cambodia, was very Theravada, influenced by the Cambodian culture. And the north was very Chinese, and the middle was a bit of each, but mostly Mahayana. And so the two groups of Buddhism, the Mahayana and Theravada, they lived together, and they shared temples and talked together, and they were pretty much united. And together, they made a little resolution that we will not, this was quite a few years ago, not recent, we will not teach jhanas to lay people. just too much trouble. That's what they said. And of course that was maybe 80 years ago, 90 years ago. But obviously recently they've changed their attitude because they find that lay people can enter jhanas. They can get jhanas like they did in the time of the Buddha. And so it is so important that people can experience those states. And again, so I said, well, why not? It doesn't seem fair that you have all these great traditions in Buddhism, teach the whole lot and don't hide anything away. That was not the Buddha's intention when he taught. But anyway, that some of the jhana practices were suppressed. And I don't think that did any good to Buddhism at all. But now it's open, and now many people teach those jhanas. So what is the relationship between the insights and the jhanas? Sometimes, because I'm a well-known jhana teacher, that sometimes people come to see me, though, on a Vipassana retreat, and they saw these incredible lights. And in these really deep sort of states of stillness. So yeah, that's natural, that's what happens. When you get deep insights and you get still and peaceful and you get some energy coming up, this is what occurs. They said, that was supposed to be wrong. That's not wrong. Well done. Congratulations, you got in a deep state of meditation. So it's going to happen anyway. No matter what you do, if you start, or who you are, well, if you really let go and get very peaceful and just have a bit of confidence, not so much fear, then of course this is what happens. It's a nature of your mind. And over the years, all sorts of amazing people. And I already mentioned that guy who came to our retreat in Australian national dress a few years ago, and lots of tattoos. And one of the people who are in these retreats got a jhana, but there's so many other people as well. And also, there's some people who've hardly ever meditated before. And of course, the first time you saw that happen, and you asked a person, what do you experience? There's this young lady in Rockingham. And she came, or Safety Bay rather, area, she came to see me because she had one of these really deep experiences, mostly caused by a lot of suffering in her life. A lot of difficulty being a single mum. And she didn't actually say, but it was pretty obvious she'd been through some sort of relationship abuse. But just one day she just basically pressed the letting go button, because sometimes the life can be very tough. And she pressed the letting go button and did it properly. And she had this experience and no one could ever tell her what it was. And then she heard me teach, or someone told her about me, she came in and it was a jhana she had. Never did it again, but at least she had some experience. You need to know what it was. And also the other classic case was this lady in Penang. Because I used to go there every year, and obviously I would be there just before New Year, but for the COVID. And it's the first time I missed going to Penang for years. But anyway, when I was there, they said to me, look, there's this lady who really wants to see you. And I think, she may benefit from seeing you. Would you mind? She wasn't on the retreat I was teaching. Sometimes I'm really kind. Sometimes people waste my time. But I don't mind. I always learn something. But that's why you always say, yes, come, let's hear you. And this one, I was very happy, privileged for her to come in. So what happened? She thought she had a sort of psychotic episode. And it just changed much of the way she looked at her life. And she asked the doctors and the psychologists and psychiatrists. And what really affected her was that she didn't know what it was. And no one could explain it to her. So she thought maybe she had gone mad or something wrong with her brain or something. And anyway, when I listened to her without interrupting her, I was just really pleased. And when she finished speaking, I said that was a jhana, the first jhana experience. And I gave her some more information of what she would have experienced in that state. Yeah, that's it. At last, someone understands. And so it was because I added the extra information which she didn't tell me, and it was what she'd experienced, classic jhana experience. She left just a really peaceful, happy being. She had a meaning for the experience which she fluked at that time. And there's many people sometimes fluke jhanas, So that's one of the reasons why it's wonderful to make it quite clear what happens and how it happens and what it means and what happens to you afterwards. You know, there's another person who sort of fluked a jhana. He wasn't taught at all about these jhanas. And he was actually really young. He was about 7 years of age, I think. And he was sitting under a rose apple tree in India almost 2,600 years ago. And he wasn't taught how to meditate. You know who that was, don't you? That's Siddhartha Gautama as a boy. And just developing a powerful jhana. And that meant so much to him later on in his life. You know, when he was searching for enlightenment, he remembered that experience. And that was what encouraged him actually to go back into those states. And again, become our Buddha. So anyway, that it's one of the reasons why that I often say that insight and calm will always go together. And the sign of insight, that you've understood something, is how peaceful it makes you afterwards. You've solved a problem. You know, you've fixed up a bug in your computer software or something. And so, you know, and then it's easy. You don't have to be stressed out anymore. So the sign of insight is not your ability to argue with your friends around the coffee table and win those arguments. That's not a sign of insight at all. The sign of insight is you can be at peace. And still, you don't need to argue anymore. You can be friends with the people who are different than you. So the sign of insight is peace, stillness, calm. And with that, you have to say kindness, compassion, love. This beautiful thing which inspired me when I was a layperson to become a Buddhist. And one of those things you saw there, which was really quite shocked me, I'd never seen this in any other path, was the no punishments. Even if you've done some really, 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 really terrible things in your life. I know people who understand rebirth, reincarnation, whatever you wish to call it, you're thinking, I've done some terrible things, I could be sent to hell. And there's something terribly wrong in what I just said. You will not be sent to hell or to any bad realm. You choose to go there. You've got total, in a sense, free choice. If you don't want to go, you don't feel you need to go, you don't have to go. You send yourself there. You know, for many years, that was insights which came up, and I'll explain it a bit more later on. But I thought that, Ajahn Brahm was making this up. I even thought that myself, and the suttas, I couldn't see any justification for that. And then when I was talking about that with Ajahn Brahmali, you notice I taught him suttas and Pali, and now he teaches me. In a sense, he's taken that knowledge much further than I took it. And he said, "No, Ajahn Brahm, you're right." And he showed me the sutta where, the ways of teaching then, sort of these beings like Yama, they remind you of what you've done in your life. They don't give you a sentence and send you to hell. You were just reminded yourself good things and bad things you've done. And then you choose where you need to go. Which means, as I say, just an easy way of remembering this, that the gates of hell are always open. You can walk out whenever you want. But a lot of times people don't want to, because they have this terrible guilt. A deepening of what I said yesterday, of you don't think you are worth being happy. You need to be punished. And that need to be punished was something which I saw, I read, and the more I read, the more inspired I was that wasn't there in Buddhism at all. And even for monks and nuns, you do something wrong, you do some really bad acts, you're not punished, you're not given sort of 100 strokes, not like some religions. So please, actually in some places you are. I must be more careful. Because remember, many years ago, it was actually a thing raising funds for the nuns' monastery. Dhammasaya, I think, for your road there. And so at my birthday, I'd auctioned everything. I don't know what else I can auction. My robe, my sort of sitting cloth, my sitting cushion. Sitting cushion made a lot of money. How much was that? 20,000 US or something? The sitting cushion I'd used. I didn't realise how valuable these sitting cushions are. So the one in... So I said we should get a safe to put this cushion in when I'm not sitting on it. What it really is like, people that love getting a nun's monastery, a Jhana grove, retreat centre, or any other sort of stuff. You really get inspired, and sometimes it's just a reason to donate. Just give me an excuse. You can take anything. But anyway, I was talking with the monks. I said, I've auctioned everything. What can I auction now? I said, I'll auction me. Ajahn Brahm on sale. And it wasn't sort of, a few people raised their eyebrows. That's one of the reasons why we shave our eyebrows as monks and nuns. We can't raise them anymore. I said, what are you doing, Ajahn Brahm? I said, look, it's for a really good cause. And number two, I'm not really auctioning myself. I'm just saying, for the highest bidder, I'll go anywhere in the world for a couple of weeks, and you can take me anywhere, as long as you return me in the same state or better state than when I left. Probably. A little bit of sense of humour was good. And so the fellow who won me for 2 weeks, many of you know that's Adrian from Indonesia, and so he took me over to Bhutan. So great, it's a free trip to Bhutan. But one of the scariest things, if you've ever been to Bhutan, you go to the monasteries over there. And when we went into this monastery, the monks there were having a meeting, a formal meeting, because they were electing the new discipline master. And this is not just somebody who teaches you the rules, it's someone who enforces the rules. And we were there in just a compound when the election had just finished and the discipline master came out. And he had this whip. I've never seen anything like this. It was 3 long leather thongs. And he whacked it on the floor. And our guide said, be careful, because it doesn't matter who you are. And it was true. If you're in the monastery compound and you do something wrong, then you're going to catch it. That was really scary. I don't know if that was really true. I think it was. But anyway, all of us visitors, we just did a few steps back to make sure that we were out of range. But, to me, that's not Buddhism. Just having that sort of stuff. But anyway, just seeing it, whoa. So we never invited any Bhutanese discipline masters to this monastery. But anyway, there was something which we never had in Buddhism, which I read. And so instead, what happens? You don't have that punishment, because punishment is that causes fear. And I often mention that fear is what drives the truth underground. An example of insight is, we have all these precepts, but why is it so difficult to keep the precepts? Why? And so it's okay to say you've got to keep these precepts, but why do people break them? I want to have the insight why it's so hard to have morality in our world. And the solution came up, again, through experience, when it's one day, because I've been here such a long time, people really trust me. And some of the children, they come to the temple, you've seen them, they come to the temple when they're really small, they're playing around with their mum. And then later on, they sort of go to school, university, graduate and stuff. They still keep coming to the temple. It's like you're like a grandfather for them. But a grandfather is wise and will never hurt and harm them at all, so they trust you. So this one day, this Sri Lankan girl came. She was about 17, 18, 19, I didn't really ask. She said, Ajahn Brahm, can I speak to you just quietly? Yes, sure. What's up? He said, I'm in big trouble. I said, what trouble? No, she was really concerned. She said, I'm pregnant. for my boyfriend. Have you told your mum and dad yet? She said, no, that's what I've come to you for. Can you please tell them for me? And it was sort of, amusing, but I felt like honoured that, that she trusted me enough and I could actually help her out of a difficult situation. And I asked her, why won't you tell your parents? I didn't want to force her at all, but she said they'd probably kill me. And then, thank that girl, that I did tell the parents and just said that people make mistakes, girls make mistakes, boys make mistakes. But, your daughter needs you to get her through that crisis. But what really hit me was why it is that your children, when they need you the most, when your son's got involved in drugs, that they feel so afraid to tell you, to tell their mum and dad what they've done. And they really, really do need your help. So after that, I realized that's why people do lie or they hide the truth. Because for them, they feel it's less painful and troublesome to tell a lie than to tell the truth. And the joke which illustrates that was the story of this man I think it was in New York, and he was accused of, I forget what crime it was, but if he was found guilty, it would be a capital punishment. He'd be electrocuted. And so during the trial, the judge, heard this defendant, and it was just really shifty the way he spoke and everything. And so the judge interrupted the examination and told the defendant that in New York State, perjury, telling lies under oath in a court, is a very, very serious offence. Do you realize just how serious lying in court is to the defendant? The defendant, with a very calm face, said, yes, I know how serious the penalties for lying are, but the penalties for telling the truth are much worse. He was up for execution. And again, that was a funny story, but it really opened up why it is that people lie. It's not worth your while telling the truth, you think. Which is, again, the reason why you want to encourage people to feel safe telling the truth. So they don't need to lie. And I've taught that for a long time now. If you're come to our Buddhist center in town and come to this retreat, you have kids, please tell your children, doesn't matter what you do, I mean that, no matter what you do, if you tell us the truth, we will never punish you. We never shout at you. It may be disappointing to your mum and dad, but we need to know so we can help you. That's what mother and father are there for. So never be afraid. You can tell us anything. And as long as it's the truth, then fine. We'll never say bad things to you, because we're going to help you become better. You made mistakes. You're allowed to make mistakes, as long as you learn from those mistakes. And if you hide the mistakes, of course, you make more mistakes. It gets worse. So it's called like amnesty for your kids. And I also say that when you do marriage blessings as well. Imagine for those of you who've had relationships or will have relationships or got one now, what a wonderful thing it is if your partner, they'll always tell you the truth. Even if it's something which is very embarrassing for them and just very hurtful for you. If they tell the truth, they're telling it to you because they respect and love you. And they said, I made a big mistake, a really big mistake. Please, sorry, help me not make the mistake again. But if they feel you're going to divorce them or hit them or punish them or whatever, who'd want to tell the truth? So that's one of the reasons why we have that precept in Buddhism. Your fourth precept, musawada veramani, not lying. We have to respect truth so much, honesty so much. Doesn't matter what you've done, as long as you tell the truth, then amnesty. And that's actually a powerful insight. It's one of the reasons why, sometimes I feel for politicians. I've seen many politicians in my life, some presidents and prime ministers, really executive presidents, prime ministers with a huge amount of power. Sometimes you feel the situation they're in. And many of them would love to be honest, but they can't be. They lose their job, even go into prison. They made a big mistake, but they can't admit it. And I thought, can't our community realize that even our politicians and our leaders, they're human, they're fallible, they sometimes make mistakes. Please allow them to make mistakes as long as they admit it. And if they're honest, just re-elect them. Instead of re-electing liars and people who cheat and hide the truth and don't allow the truth to come out. And that hurts everybody. So these are insights into just what really makes this world work. So little by little, especially as you meditate more and more and you live a peaceful lifestyle, you see the faults in our world. And some of those faults, they sometimes in some tradition they call them poisons instead of defilements. Not so much looking upon them as personal failings, like a defilement in your mind, the way you think or the way you look, the way you talk. It's more like seeing what they do to our world, our relationships, and our planet. Poisons. And so to overcome those poisons, we have this beautiful insight, how we can live a more peaceful life, even in jhana growth. And one of those, no punishment, the story which I love telling if you haven't heard it before. The years ago, actually quite a few years ago, just after I took over from the previous Serpentine Sayadaw, Ajahn, there was our trainee monks, the Anagarikas, wearing white. One came to see me in the morning after breakfast. Can I have a talk with you? I said, yeah, what is it? And he looked at me, he had his head down, and he just felt so guilty. He said, look, I'm terribly sorry, Ajahn Brahm, but I broke my precepts yesterday evening. I'm terribly sorry. And he was obviously he said, I haven't slept all night. It's really hard for me to tell you this. So what do you do? And eventually he came out of it. It took a while for him to confess what he'd done. He was so ashamed of it. He said, last night, just after the meeting, I was really hungry. So I went to the kitchen. I got out some bread. I made myself a sandwich and I ate it. Sometimes I've got to be careful to stop laughing. To me, it was just a total overreaction. I said, okay, you ate something. Okay, just don't do it again. You can go. He looked at me, he said, aren't you going to punish me? I said, no, we don't do punishments. And I said, but listen, eat more at lunchtime. So you get, more stuff in your guts or in your stomach, to last the afternoon or evening. And if you are hungry in the evening, you know now all the allowable things, eating chocolate and honey and orange juice and carrot juice, and it's amazing just how much people can put in their tummy in the afternoon without breaking any rules. And I gave him all that advice. I said, okay, you can go. He said, no, Ajahn Brahm, look, I know my character, he says. If you don't give me some punishment or penance, I'll do it again. So he put me on the spot. It was a very fortunate series of events because that evening, I think, when I finished the meeting, I was reading a novel by Robert Hughes, The Fatal Shore, about the early history of Australia, especially Sydney, and how that many convicts came to Australia and they were treated just so brutally. And if they made any mistake, they were whipped with this thing called the cat of nine tails. I'm sure you know about that, but I was trying to find some information about Australia. I'd just come from England. I wanted to get some feeling for the history of the place. And so I just was reading that in the morning. I said, oh, okay, because it was fresh in my mind. I said, if you want a punishment, this is Australia anyway, so I'll give you 50 strokes of the cat. And I remember this guy looking at me, and his eyes went wide, and his lips started trembling. And he was wearing white clothes, and his face went whiter than the clothes he was wearing. He really thought I was going to flog him. I said, well, you asked for it. And then I had to pause a while just to allow this thing to settle into him. And I said, 50 strokes of the cat is your punishment. No, I said, at that time in Bodhinyana Monastery there were 2 cats. Find either one of them and stroke it. 1, 2, 3, 4. A whole 50 strokes. And of course, he actually didn't laugh because he was quite surprised. I said, what you need is to learn some more kindness. And you can learn that from either the cats by stroking them 50 times. So, when you're kind to a little cat and you learn its importance in Buddhism, you can be kind to yourself. And it's just, he made himself a sandwich in the afternoon. Come on, big deal. Now, please don't make yourself sandwiches. You don't need psychic powers to read people's minds. Because we haven't got any cats left, they're all gone. But anyway, it was just a nice little anecdote. So the insight of, why do people punish themselves? And we've heard that, we've grown up with that, but it's totally just, it doesn't work. Now, I don't know about you, but in my age, I'm 69 now, when I went to school, they used a cane. And I was terrified of that. And of course, I never got hit because I was too sneaky to get hit. But it still scared me. But then if you were ever punished, kids didn't know why. Why were we punished? Just the same nowadays. You see that people, they drive in their cars and they've got these little detectors so you know where the speed cameras are. So we don't really appreciate why those speed cameras are there, why they're positioned there. We just want to avoid them, that's all. That's why I wanted to avoid punishment without realizing why it's there. Once you realize why those things are there for, you don't really need punishment, you just realize that drink driving or speeding just is dangerous. And of course, these days sometimes I have victim impact statements. And to me, obviously I was a monk at the time, I hadn't drunk for years, but one of the stories which really made it very clear to me is why people should not drink. Actually, 2 stories. The first story was this article I read from Sydney. It was quite a few years ago now. But Sydney, just before the Christmas New Year period, there's one gentleman, and his office party. At an office party, they serve alcohol, so he had a drink, and he had quite a few drinks in the end. But he had to drive home. And he thought he knew he was over the limit, but what's the chances of finding a policeman on the way back home? So, the odds were in his favour. But unfortunately, that day, or that evening, the police in Sydney had just blocked one whole road to test everybody for their blood alcohol level. And so he took his chance, and unfortunately, it wasn't his lucky day. He went that road, and there was no way of U-turning. So he just had to wait in line until he got tested. And he knew he was done for. Probably have a big fine, even lose his license. But as they asked him to get out of his car, and when he got out of his car, they gave him a little breathalyzer thing to blow into. And just before, the officer had it in the breathalyzer, there was a sound of a big car crash. Because they blocked the road, and one car was going a little bit too fast and rammed into the rear end of another car in front of him. And the police officer heard that as well and said, "Sir, it's really more important, and I checked this road incident, than your alcohol level. Get back in your car and go home. And he thought, wow, how close can you get? And it was really within a second or two of being busted big time. So he got in the car and went home. And in the morning, he had a hangover, but he had to get out of bed because somebody was ringing his doorbell. They wouldn't stop. So he was in his pajamas, and he went to the door, and there was 2 New South Wales policemen outside. And of course, if you see policemen outside your door, you why? Well, what have I done? And he realised he was drink driving the night before, but they can't arrest him now. He's not driving. So he relaxed and said, "How can I help you, sir?" And said, "Would you mind if we look inside your garage?" And I said, "Well, nothing in my garage, just my car. There's no stolen goods. I'm an honest person." "Yeah, sure." And when he opened his garage door, that's when he almost had a heart attack. Because inside his garage, his car wasn't there. There was a police car there. When they said, "Get in your car and go home," he was so out of it, he got in the police car and drove that one home. They were missing a car at the roadblock. And they had an extra car, he didn't know where it came from. They soon tracked him down. He was really busted big time. So really be careful. But the other story, which was more poignant, just was probably the worst funeral I've ever done in all those years here in Perth. It was for this Chinese couple, mainland China. It was maybe 15, 20 years ago now. One-child policy. So this couple had their one kid, it was a daughter. And they really sacrificed everything, as parents do, especially in China at that time, to give their daughter the best possible education. And so the daughter did really well, worked very hard. Eventually got sort of a scholarship to study here in Perth, at university. And she did really, really well and just graduated. And so she managed to get some funds so her parents could come to her graduation ceremony. And the graduation ceremony was one afternoon. But in the morning time, she was walking with her family. I think it was in Gosnells, walking with her family down the street on the pavement. And somebody who was drunk lost control of their car, mounted the pavement, and smashed into this girl. She never got to her graduation ceremony. Right in front of the 2 parents. Parents couldn't speak any English. They relied upon their daughter to do the translation for them. And they asked me to do the funeral service for them. It was one of the saddest funeral services I've ever done in my life. It was just so close to all the hard work, sacrifices and dreams being fulfilled. The last moment, a stupid drunk driver killed her. And just basically killed those parents' future and their dreams and their hopes. I don't know what happened to them afterwards. And it was so terrifying and for them. In a country they didn't know, didn't understand. And seeing right in front of their eyes all their hard work, sacrifice and dreams destroyed in a moment. I often tell that story, so if anyone does take any alcohol, please, 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 please don't drive. Get a taxi. You don't want to be that person who kills somebody. Anyway, so this actually really is insight, because sometimes people say, no, that won't happen to me. Oh, no. A lot of times we're in denial about what we're actually doing, about the consequences of it. Even I don't know why I have to tell this in Malaysia and Singapore often, but some of the people I talk to are business people, and they are quite well off. And when they're well off, these guys, they got married, they got kids, but they have mistresses. And you talk to them and say, "Look, you're being stupid." So that's okay. My wife doesn't know. And then, fortunately, you can quote that news event which happened about 5 or 6 years ago, where the head of the CIA, I think General Petraeus, he was like a hero in some war somewhere, but he became appointed to the head of the Central Intelligence Association, the spy network, in chief in the US. And he had an affair with his biographer and got busted. And I tell everybody, look, if the head of the CIA can't keep a secret from his wife, what chance do you have? Zero. You're going to get busted. So why is it that people think you're not going to get found out? Because we don't want to be found out. We're afraid of being. We're in denial. And it's those little things in our ordinary life cause us problems. Why is it that when you have a lump in your breast, you think, no, this is not cancer? Why? The fear, the denial. I don't want to go through this. That is why you don't go in time to see the doctor and get it fixed up and live a reasonably happy life. And sometimes we're in so much denial of sickness, and that's one of the reasons why I do this little exercise. I want to get that away. Where does that time go? Crikey. Anyway. Because I remember this, that many years ago, someone asked me this, the last time I was in a hospital, like the patient, was 29 years ago. Been pretty healthy since. But I remember just before then, I was really sort of tired and I was really exhausted. I don't know why. But anyway, I went to see the doctor, the local GP, which was in Byford at the time, and sitting in the surgery, just waiting for your appointment. And then one of the prison officers from Carnet came in because he had a bad back. And he recognised me because I was the one going to teach the prisoners every week over in Carnet, prison farm. He looked at me and he looked me up and down with disgust. He said, I never expected to see you in a place like this. It's only doctor's surgery. What's wrong with that? It's not a pub or a brothel or something. But he thought, you're a monk, you meditate, you live a healthy life, you shouldn't get sick. And he made me feel like it was a personal failing, being sick. And I wasn't meditating enough or whatever. But that was, thanks to him for that, because that started getting you the insight into what's wrong with being sick. And to emphasize the point, is there anybody in this room who's never been sick in their life? Now, be honest. Please put your hand up if you've never ever been sick. Can I assume from that each one of you has been sick from time to time? So it's actually pretty usual being sick. It's actually quite normal. If someone had put their hand up and said they'd never been sick, you're either just mad or you're incredibly just rare, unusual. And if I told the medical research facilities, they'll have you in there in a moment's notice, do research on you. Why aren't you sick? Because it's really weird to be not sick. It's really unusual. There's something wrong with you that you're not sick. So using that argument, you tell me there's nothing wrong with being sick. If you're sick, be honest with it. I'm sick, I need a rest, I need some antibiotics, I need something. I did see on the board yesterday that our hard-working manager, Leha, put on there, I'm back to work now, I have to be back to work, otherwise the spiritual dictator, which was meaning me, will fire me. Leha, please be confident that I cannot fire you because there's a fire ban. So your job is safe. But you know what it is, sometimes we feel embarrassed if we're sick. And because of that, we're not truthful to our sicknesses. So please do this. And when you go and see your GP and you're sick, never ever say, there's something wrong with me, I'm sick. Please say, there's something right with me, doctor. I'm sick again. And sometimes people think that's a joke. It certainly lets you know, the doctors know in the area. They come and, you come to them and you say, there's something right with me, I'm sick again. Oh yeah, you're one of Ajahn Brahm's disciples. But what you're doing is you're allowing sickness to be and not stigmatizing it. You know how much we stigmatize things in life? Anything slightly different, we stigmatize it and give people a hard time. There's nothing wrong. People are different. One of the great insights which I got, I'm just talking about insights from life rather than insights from meditation. Just like the 5 hindrances talk, I'll give the real talk on insight tomorrow. But when I was a student at Cambridge, I was a Buddhist, and I told you that. And then some of my friends, after 1 year there, some of my friends were Christians, and I actually cultivated relationships with people who were different than me. Because I didn't want to be sort of like a born-again Buddhist. Actually, all Buddhists are born again. Because we believe in reincarnation. So you're all born-again Buddhists. But anyway, and they told me that they were volunteering one afternoon a week to go to full-blown, let's call it mental hospital at the time, to volunteer, help out there. When they said that, I thought, oh my goodness, I'm in trouble now. Because they knew I was a Buddhist. And you had to keep up with the Christians, like keeping up with the Joneses. And that's what it was, just out of pride and not wanting to be embarrassed. So I said, I'll go as well then. I was really busy, not really busy, but lazy. I didn't want to go over there and volunteer. It was one of the best things I ever did. Because it was actually working in the, not physiotherapy, the occupational therapy ward for Down syndrome. And I thought, oh yeah, you've got to do this and make the best of it. But I really started to enjoy it. I look forward to it. I still remember the last day but one, the penultimate day I went there. The whole staff and the Down syndrome people, I was looking after one group the first part of the afternoon, had a cup of tea, as you do in England, always have a tea break. And then afterwards another group. And they totally just hid the truth from me. Because afterwards, after the 2 sessions were finished, they said, can you just wait a bit longer? And all the Down syndrome people were there. And they invited me in to make a presentation. They said that you of all the students volunteering, you've been here for 2 years. No one else has ever done it that long. We love you. We know that your final exam's coming next week. So you're going to leave us. We wanted to say thank you. And of course I cried. Crying is good. You appreciate. And this was people I really cared for and loved, and they were just saying thank you. And they totally tricked me. I didn't expect it. And after giving me a little present, only simple things which the Down syndrome people had made up. Once they offered it to me, and I said thank you. I said, it's a bit embarrassing to say this, but my exams don't start for 2 weeks' time. Can I come back next week, please? Please, please, please. So after leaving, I came back again. And they said, what do you want to do that for? And I told them I love it. One of the reasons I loved it there, because you could either spend time with Nobel laureates, or you can spend time with your Down syndrome mates. And I honestly preferred spending time with the people with Down syndrome. They trusted me, I trusted them. And one of those examples which really shocked me, but told me what was happening, that I just got off the bus and was walking to the unit. And one of the Down syndrome people, they saw me and they came running towards me. They'd never done that before. Running right towards me, put their hands around me and gave me this big hug. Now please understand, this was England. In England you don't hug people. And especially it was man to man. I wasn't gay, I had girlfriends. Only one at a time. And and I just was confused. I said, what did you do this for? And he said, what happened? He said, I looked at you and you were just so sad. And I was really gobsmacked. Because the night before I broke up with a girlfriend. No one else could see it. This Down syndrome. Man, he could see it straight away. The emotional intelligence was like Nobel laureate size. And I was stunned. That's one of the reasons I like to hang out with them. Instead of stigmatizing them and locking up in some sort of institution. Now, these people need to serve and to show the incredible qualities. That taught me not to stigmatize ever again, not to judge. Of course, I did judge, but I tried not to. Like people with tats and Australian national uniform are going to come and start a meditation retreat. But it taught you so much, how you challenge all these ideas which have been programmed into you, which you trust from other people like me, or just like on the news, experts, instead of trusting your heart. It's one of the reasons why, to open that heart up and to find just the wisdom which is in there, which is there for each human being. You know this is right to be, not to look down upon, but to be friends with people who are not quite the same as you. They're not worse, they're not better, they're different. And that's why just going into jails and touching, emotionally, psychologically, murderers and rapists, respecting them, not stigmatizing them. And you can just allow your imagination or your visualization what it must be like to be someone who's murdered or raped, and you're in a jail, and that's all you're known as. Well, how much feel? And then someone comes along and sees you. Not the big, big mistakes which you're known for, but something else about you. Have you ever been judged and realized, why are you judging me so harshly for? Yeah, I did make a mistake, but I did so much more. I'm much bigger than that. And that's one of the reasons also why, and if you visit someone who's really sick or even dying, don't look at the sickness, don't look at the terminal disease. Look at the person. No. Okay, I'll finish off with this story. It's one of my favorite ones. And please interrupt me if I said at the beginning of this retreat, because after 4 or 5 days I talk so much. I don't know what I said in the beginning, and if I said it before, I know I said it before in other talks, but it kind of fits in now, fits in here. And this was the time that I was counselling it's a Western woman, she was a Tibetan nun, and because she had cancer, terminal cancer, and so she's really, really sick, trying the very best to do a bit of meditation, a bit of this, a bit of that, but the cancer took over. And so she was admitted. For those of you who remember it, there was one of the first hospices was in Shenton Park, in, I forget what it's called. Anyway, she was in the Shenton Park hospice. And just I was working in Bodhinyana Monastery, one of the Anagars, there's a telephone call for you, it's emergency. So I took the call, and it was her. She called me and said, look, Ajahn Brahm, I'm going to die in 24 hours. And can you come and see me? And a few times that's happened, that people, not the doctors don't know, but people know. They said, I'm going to die soon, 24 hours. And she was pretty accurate, about 27 hours, I think, since the telephone call, she passed away. When people say that, they know. Don't know how they know, but they know. And so I stopped whatever I was doing and got in the car and just was driven to Shenton Park. It's about an hour and a quarter, hour and a half from Serpentine in those days. As soon as I could, and got to the reception desk, because you can't just walk into the hospice. You have to go to the reception. Who are you? So my name's Ajahn Brahm. I'm come to see this lady who just called me, and she wants to see me. And then the nurse, which was on the reception desk, happened to be the matron, the head nurse of the whole complex. And she was really fierce. She said, "No, you can't go and see her. This woman has given strict instructions. She wants no visitors." I said, "But she just called me about an hour and a half ago." "I don't know about that, but we have to respect our patient's wishes." "But look, I've come all this way from Serpentine and she's wanted me to come." And she looked at me and said, "Come with me." She's really fierce. But you know, I may look soft, but I don't get intimidated easily. And so I went with her. She took me to the patient's room. And on the outside of the room was this big sign, which the patient had made herself. And the sign read, "Absolutely no visitors." And the matron pointed at it. "See?" And the matron was very satisfied. You know, that was that patient's own handwriting. And she made that piece of paper herself, and she'd written it there. We have to respect our patient's wishes. And of course, you looked at it. Part of insight is not just seeing the big details, seeing the small details. So I looked at it a bit more carefully. And on the bottom, right at the bottom, in small letters, were the four words, "Except for Ajahn Brahm." And it's true, I can't exaggerate these stories. And I was a bit naughty, I couldn't resist it. Sometimes I said, should I have done this, should I not have done this? But at the time I couldn't resist. I looked at the head nurse and said, "See?" And she glared at me and just strode away. Well, I did enjoy that. I must admit, that's bad karma on my part, maybe. But anyway, I went in there. But the most important part of that peace story was I asked the patient, the nun, "Why did you write that?" I was interested to know why. And she told me, said, "Look, everybody, all my friends, colleagues, relations, who come to see me, always took one look at me, because you know what it's like when people are really sick with cancer and they're dying. They're so emaciated. And it's skin and bones, and just they look sort of not like the friend which you knew." And she said, "When I come in here and people see me, they get so upset. And I have to deal with their emotional baggage. And I've got enough emotional baggage myself to deal with. I'm dying." He said, "Ajahn Brahm, you're the only one who comes in here and talks to me." And that's where I got that saying, just don't talk to the sickness, talk to the person. I said, "Any latest jokes?" Because imagine, you get everybody, you know you're going to die, you know you're sick. And the doctors come, "How are you feeling today?" "I'm feeling terrible." Just, "How is it?" "Oh, I'm going to die." And he keeps saying that and upset everybody. And no one actually treats you like a person. They stigmatize you and they treat you as a sickness. So what's the latest joke? So I'm going to finish off with the latest joke. Whether you got cancer or not. Because Anusha, where's Anusha gone? Oh, there you are. She asked me, "What's the latest joke today?" And that was the what do you call the person standing in the middle of the tennis court? What do you call the thing standing in the middle of the tennis court? A net. Okay, that's enough for insight today. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay, I don't know if that was the Dhamma talk or just some entertainment, but I'll give a talk on insight meditation tomorrow. There's some insight there somewhere.